What's the stupidest thing you've done at a family gathering? Got drunk in front of my great grandmother and started to shit talk my entire family in a baby voice to my baby niece. While the entire family thought I was out of line, my great grandmother thought it was hilarious and that I had valid points. Tell my sister-in-law that her kids, my nephews, are why I don't want kids. Not me but my dad, as a kid, took a shit in the fireplace and went around bragging about it. My grandma still brings it up to this day. In my defense, I have epilepsy and was having a partial aura/mini seizure which caused this. I go into the kitchen and a few cousins are standing there with my aunt. I say sandwich I think, but my brain was literally just reset about 20 seconds ago and I'm operating at an ultra dumb level. I remember this primarily because there was aftermath to recollect. I took mayo out of the fridge and just throw a spoonful, I think, at the fridge. I then take out cheese and throw it on the mayo, followed by turkey at the ground and bread somewhere. I look at it and just walked away. My family did not know I had epilepsy at that point in time. That was the icebreaker. It was Thanksgiving last year. I was playing Quiplash with my family. I entered my name and the next thing was my aunt asking who is rock hard. I was home from college on break and we were playing Trivial Pursuit. The question to me was something along the lines of what adult movie actress has the last name that sounds like the last name of the star of Hawaii 5-0? I knew the Hawaii 5-0 star was Jack Lord, thought about it for a minute, then blurted out Tracy Lords. My parents just looked at me like I had just produced a severed head from my pocket. Not me but at Thanksgiving last year my dad once brought out photos of the car crash that killed my grandpa and passed them around to my mom and her family. It was her dad that died and he talked for like an hour about how bad his death must have been. It was painful to watch as he had only died recently. Got absolutely hammered the night before and passed out in a snowdrift at the family snowmobile party. Fell off my sled and just laid there waiting for death to take me. Death took too long. So I got up and went back to the group. I'm pretty sure my dad knew what was up and felt that slogging around in the snow all day might teach me not to do that again. He was right. Haven't gotten out of control drunk since Christmas of 1995. I inadvertently went to a strip club with my parents when I was 22 years old. My mom had been ordering pizza from the new bar down the street and was raving about it one night, so we decided to go check out the new restaurant and try their pizza, just me and my parents, instead of having it delivered. As soon as we pulled into the parking lot my spidey senses went off, as I knew this place was known for having some seedy people hanging around, and it's always been some sort of strip club, but I thought, no way, my dad would know if it was a strip club. He's gotten pizza from here several times now. I couldn't have been more wrong. That voice in my head was telling me to turn around and run as soon as we parked, and two men were standing at the door sharing a pretty raunchy story with all sorts of lovely details as we walked up. We walked in the door, and as soon my family entered, it went silent. Every waitress and bartender stopped and looked at us. The strippers even stopped and stared at us. I turned to my dad, and before I could say anything, my mom says it's a strip club. My dad, being the stubborn man he is, says I don't care, I want pizza. Never in my life have I heard of a strip club even selling pizza, let alone offering delivery. We sit down. I strategically placed myself so my back is to the strippers, and we place our order. 45 long painful minutes waiting for our pizza and having small talk while two very overweight, out of shape homely girls take off their tops. Thankfully that's all they took off. Danced a few feet behind us. My mom finally asks where our pizza is, and the waitress comes back and tells us she forgot to put in the order. That was the last straw for my mom, who quickly paid the tab, and we left point hungry and scarred for the rest of our lives. We still laugh about the day we went to a strip club together for pizza. They shut down a few weeks later, so I never did get to try the amazing pizza my parents raved about. When I was a teen at my godfather's funerals, I had to refrain a crazy laughing bit imagining just that, while my parents were crying their eyes out in the middle of church. My godfather used to be a huge prankster and I suddenly imagined him just sitting up saying, "Ha, gotcha all, you losers." He wasn't religious at all, was young, and I had seen him a few weeks prior, so the whole thing, along with a very religious ceremony, seemed very unreal to me. My parents still talk about that to this day, saying I got my sense of humor from him, meaning I laugh too much for my own good, haha. My brother had been overserved and was passed out on the floor in the middle of the group. He was only wearing gym shorts. Suddenly he woke for one brief second and pulled his shorts off, was not wearing underwear. He had no idea where he was. He was just laying there nude in front of maybe 20 people. It all went completely quiet until my uncle spoke up and said that son of a bitch is hung. Funniest thing I have ever seen. I was with a friend, Dennis, at his family reunion. He sees his cousin arrive with a friend in tow. My friend greets his cousin he hadn't seen in years with, "Hey Joe, you crazy cocksucker." His guest gets in Dennis's face very hostile about his phrasing. Dennis pretty much greeted everyone as a cocksucker, but the other guy insisted there were better ways of saying it. Nobody knew the cousin was gay before that, and in a small town it was a hell of a way to come out. Once I walked into a baby shower for my cousin's wife and sat down in the biggest chair of honor, right in front of everyone, including the pregnant woman. My mom looked like she wanted to die. On my husband's side, all the women are house elves during family gatherings, and for years I figured showing up with food and booze was enough of a contribution. It wasn't. At 4 years old, I sat on my grandpa's birthday cake. They'd put it in the seatless back of the station wagon, where I had to sit, but neglected to tell me it was there, and didn't have a cover over it. I was probably distracted plotting my next mischief, and didn't notice I'd plopped my crazy little but down on it. My little tights and dress were covered with frosting, and the cake was shot. Seriously, though, they shouldn't have been surprised. I never sat still. I once had a middle-aged college professor who said he was back east for a family reunion and mentioned he had a hot tub. Later, he overheard two of his aunts around the corner, "Do you know he lives in California and has a hot tub? Oh, he seemed like such a good boy growing up." I ruined Thanksgiving because I was too high. I've shared this story before, but when I was a teenager I got a weed brownie from my dealer. I had never had an edible before, so I was super excited. I decided to eat it before Thanksgiving, that way I would have a nice high and all this good food to eat. He warned me that it was strong and to only eat half of it. I ate the half, and after like 15 minutes I wasn't feeling anything, so I decided to eat the other half too. I didn't know that with edibles it takes a while to kick in and wasn't instant like smoking. By the time dinner came by I was very stoned, like too much for my own comfort. My aunt and uncle were there too, along with my little cousin, who was like 4 at the time. I went upstairs to join my family and thought I could keep it together long enough for a quick dinner and nobody would be the wiser. That was not the case. I was so stoned that I could not look at anyone. So I just awkwardly stared at my food and gave one-word answers when my family tried to talk to me. It made things incredibly uncomfortable for everyone. After about 15 minutes I could not take it anymore, so I just picked up my plate and went downstairs to my room. My mom followed me and wanted to know what the hell was wrong with me. I admitted to her that I ate a weed brownie and was incredibly stoned and asked if she could just leave me alone because I was too high to deal with things right now. She was cool about it and waited until I came down from the intense high to yell at me about ruining Thanksgiving dinner. I hit on my cousin not knowing she was a cousin. I'm part of a really big family. I went to a quinceanera for one of my cousins met this beautiful girl. Her and I were flirting pretty hard back and forth when my mom walks up. "Oh good, you met Anna, she is your second cousin from your cousin Rita's marriage." I know some might say second cousins are different, but not in my family. Luckily my mom noticed and warned us as things were getting hot and heavy. A few knowing uncles and cousins were nudging each other. We were both pretty embarrassed and unsuccessfully played it off that we were just joking around. We did become really good friends still after that, no weirdness and its definition a funny joke between us now. Got wasted. I'd just lost about 70 pounds and my alcohol tolerance had gone with it, though I hadn't really tested it recently. And my husband's, then boyfriend's, family really likes wine, and I just kept topping off my wine without really paying attention to how much I was drinking. I became an uncoordinated mess and almost broke several gifts by accident. And I was still not the worst drunk at the party. 2 other people also got wasted and had a screaming match in which I was blessedly not involved. At my brother's confirmation, the whole family, almost 60 peoples, were sitting outside in the sun drinking coffee. I had a big idea as a 12-year-old to show them all how badass I was at doing saltos on the trampoline. Guess what? I was a little too fast when going around, so I took the salto and my belly slammed down hard enough to beat the sickest fart out of me. I was just as surprised as the rest. At a pool party, when I was 11, I yelled out to everyone to watch me swim the entire length of the pool underwater, dove in and almost swam right out of the bikini I was wearing. Made an abrupt dive to the bottom to adjust myself, resurfaced to laughter and mockery. Took an edible before walking into the gathering. Was probably the most likable and social version of myself. It was awful cause then they expected me to be like that at all of the following ones, and that's just not realistic as the gay cousin of our traditional Christian family. Walked 2 blocks to a bar with the entire wedding party and my family from a cousin's reception, my mother included. At some point she was ready to leave. I walked her back to the hotel and made sure she got into her room. I decided to walk back. For 1, I didn't know what time it was, and for 2, drunk me took forever to make it back to the bar. Arrive back at the bar. Nobody is there except for staff that are closing up. Sit on the curb outside the back of the bar and pass out. Wake up being slapped in the face by a police officer. It was 3 AM. I had been passed out in a parking lot for at least an hour and a half, and I got driven back to the hotel by a police officer. Hard plastic backseat in the squad car. One Christmas, my family gathered at Graham's for dinner. One of my cousins brought a karaoke machine. This turned into everyone participating. But not just participating, being made to pick a song and sing and dance in front of the rest of the family. Horrifying. So many terrible vocalists attempting to win a Grammy. So I'm paired with my cousin, brother, and uncle. We decide to pick something easy. I don't recall what, but it was an upbeat, does not require vocal talent type of song. As we sing, we are kinda throwing up hand signs as we are going. Well, my hands don't exactly cooperate, and I end up throwing 2 giant middle fingers up. I died a bit inside when I look over and see an aunt is recording my awkward childhood, immortalized forever. I have a cinema room in my house fully kitted out. I use it as a room for growing tomatoes though. Decided one Christmas to host at my place and invited the whole family over. I had only been living there for a few years, and growing tomatoes in the cinema room was normal to me, and I didn't really think about it. Nephew found tomato room, and I paid him $100 to keep his mouth shut. Stuck to his word. Surprising for a 12-year-old. Took an edible with my wife on Easter one year. We don't ever smoke or take edibles, but for some reason we thought it would be a good idea since we were hosting her side of the family. After 30 minutes and uncontrollable laughter between her and I, she went to the room and couldn't leave the bed. That left me to entertain everyone and make sure food was happening, all while I was high as a kite. Everyone asked me if she was okay, and all I could do was laugh. Her cousins picked up on what was going on, so I had to tell them. After a couple hours of holding out, she was well enough to come out, and I went in and passed out. Needless to say, it's brought up at every holiday with her family, and we haven't had any since. I was in my young 20s, had only just started drinking beer, and didn't know it can freeze. I put a few in the freezer to chill them faster during a holiday gathering. Later I went to grab one, and it seemed fine, but I didn't know it had already started to freeze. I was talking to my sister's boyfriend in the middle of the kitchen, while holding a beer I just opened. Somehow it exploded, and I didn't notice, and it shot like this beer slush up onto the ceiling above me. I took a step forward while not paying attention, and the slush came back down all over my head with the entire family watching the whole thing happen. When I was around 12 I stole my mother's dentures as a dare and put them out in the windowsill. I forgot about them and it snowed. Time to eat TG dinner and mom had frozen teeth and could only gum her food. My gay brother tried to start a fight with our pastor uncle about gay marriage at our father's funeral. He kept asking, I bet you'd never marry, officiate, one of my kind. He tried more than once after the uncle refused to engage and walked away. It was incredibly awful, and I'm still pissed about it almost 10 years later. When I was a kid, my parents brought my sister and I to a family wedding. There was this videographer that kept coming by and asking us to smile, wave, and say something. Well, for some reason my sister and I were annoyed by this, and my sister dared me to give him the middle finger next time. I don't think either one of us knew what it meant, because we were so young, but we knew it was bad. Well, sure enough, he came by again and asked us all to wave. Everyone waved and I gave the middle finger. No one seemed to notice, and I shudder thinking of the poor bride and groom watching their wedding tape and seeing 5-year-old me flipping off the camera. There was this family party. I must have been around 5, and I really needed to pee. When I tried the bathroom, it was occupied, so I figured I'd go outside and find a good spot. Went outside, walked around where we were, and finally found a great place to urinate. There was some grass and a great wall of glass protecting me from anyone looking. I still hadn't figured out that if I could see my whole family in the living room through that glass, they could see me. It was really awkward when I came back. Showed up in costume with my then significant other, also in costume. We had come straight from another thing where it actually made sense to be wearing them. The scheduling was really tight, and he insisted it would be totally cool, even appreciated, if we showed up as we were instead of changing. It wasn't, lol. People just kept asking, but why are you wearing that? So **ckking awkward. It was my birthday, and I was too stoned for my own good. I was gifted body wash and right off the bat I assumed it was moisturizer. I slathered it on my forearms. My family just watched in silence until I figured out what was wrong. The room exploded with laughter as I ran to the restroom. My cousin offered me a bottle opener for my beer on the 4th of July, and I was like, no, watch this. I put it on the edge of a gate and was going to smack the lid off. Instead I broke the bottleneck. He was like, what's wrong with you? I was at a post-funeral reception several years ago for one of my mom's cousins who had choked to death over several minutes due to some meat she was eating that lodged in her throat. I was discussing the Hunger Games. This was during its peak, about midway through the movie releases, with a couple first and second cousins who were also teens, and we had gotten up to get in line for food. We were talking about what we would do if we were in the arena and how long we think we would last. The answers all varied, but I was an outlier. I said I would seek out nightlock berries, poisonous and would cause instant death, because I doubted I would have the guts to be able to fight to the death, especially among the trained killers, and I figured I wouldn't actually be able to win. One of my cousins asked why I wouldn't just try my best, and I said because who would want to die an extremely painful and possibly slow death? I immediately realized what I just said, as some older relative ahead of us in line looked at me in utter disgust. I have never wanted the ground to swallow me more in my life than in that instant. When I was younger we would get some chips and drive around popular parks and walk up to family reunion and act like we belong. Eat free food and leave. I talked to people I have never met in my life that thought they knew me. Lol. Took acid the night before our NFL football game with the grandparents. Half hour after my friend and I took it, I thought it was junk, and we went back to my house to crash. Then somehow we ended up in the bathroom staring at the floor till 4 AM. Slept for maybe 2 hours, and by that I mean the head of every person I'd ever met was flying through the air at me and would veer off at last minute. Thought I was okay on way to game, just tired. Then at halftime my grandma asked me if I was okay. I was like, yeah, why? Apparently I hadn't said one word or made one noise the entire first half, which is very odd for me. And here I thought I was cheering the whole time. When I was a kid, me and my cousins were upstairs drawing. Well, I decided to draw a picture of one of them and then randomly decided it would be a good idea to draw him peeing. Well, one of my older cousins saw it and found it funny, so he proceeded to throw it downstairs where it got passed along until my parents, grandparents, and all of my uncles and aunts saw it. I mean, I was like 7 at the time, but it was so humiliating. Really don't know why I did that. At my grandfather's funeral the priest came around with his holy water sprinkler. Well, when it got to me, I yelled it burns, and even the priest had to turn away because he couldn't keep a straight face. Was at an outdoor gathering as a kid. A cousin had splashed some water on me, so I filled a cup and chased her to get even. Once I found her, I gave the cup a heave in her direction. Right after the water left the cup, everything slowed down, and I slowly watched her hit the ground to get out of the water's way. Standing right behind her was my grandmother and another older lady I didn't know, holding a picture and discussing the person on it. I watched in horror as the water perfectly nails them both in the face and covers the picture at the same time. As the water splashed, I experienced something I've only seen in the movies, where everyone stopped talking at the exact same time and the noise level went to zero in a moment. I stood there frozen in fear, empty water cup in hand, waiting for my life to end. Everyone took it much better than I expected, considering I managed to live to see the sun come up the next day. A few Christmases ago, my family got me a taser before my move to a big city. It looks like a little plastic gun, and you have to put a pre-packaged disposable bullet, the little prongs that shoot out and shock the bad guy, into the end for it to work. That was obvious. What was less obvious was that, without the bullet, a taser will still work as an old-fashioned stun gun, which you can just poke at a bad guy and shock with direct contact. I grew up with guns. I know they're harmless if you're careful to make sure they're unloaded, including the chamber, if the gun has one. My family's given each other real guns for Christmas many times, always in a safe condition. I thought this non-lethal weapon was pretty simple. So while demonstrating the empty taser without the bullet inserted on what I thought was a safe weapon, I managed to shock the ever-loving shit out of my hand with its backup stun gun functionality. During Christmas when I was a kid, my parents got me a basketball hoop. I wanted to dunk, so my dad lifted me into his shoulders. But I got too excited and scared and peed myself while it went down his back. He started laughing, but I started crying cause I felt bad. Ate special brownies at a Christmas reunion with my friends and their wives and kids didn't notice cause we did it at the car. I became mute for a good 2 hours and another guy started puking on the sink and grabbing it to shovel it by hand onto the toilet. Another dude started to laugh uncontrollably over the dinner table while the rest of the group couldn't understand what the hell was happening. My mom thanked me to be the only one normal at the table. I just couldn't answer, of course. Accidentally put on lesbian butt licking porn for my 93-year-old grandpa and everyone else who came to my Thanksgiving. Friends and family. It was my cousin's box that I was using as a DVD player and the wrong file got clicked. My best friend's husband, who I had just met, yelled best Thanksgiving ever, and then the owner of this box walked back in with his brand new girlfriend, and I had to pretend we didn't just all watch his lesbian butt licking porn as a family. My brothers and would always end up drinking beer and playing basketball or over the line. We ignored everyone else until food was served and then went back to hanging out. Mom always got pissed, but mom was always way drunker than us. I was 13 at a family reunion, and it was out in the country. I loved these reunions because my great aunt had a lot of land with all sorts of toys to roam it with. A few of my uncles or cousins brought their firearms. I had never even been near one before, much less held on. Until now. They soon lived to regret that decision. Nobody decided give me any instructions other than hold it like this and aim at that target down past the pond and hold on. So that is what I did. I had no idea it was going to be so loud up close and my ears started ringing. Then I turned to find someone to take the 9mm from my hand, and as I turned they all hit the ground because I didn't know to point it down. I didn't fire a second shot. Someone grabbed it from me and shouted at me, didn't hear what, as I walked away and sat down. Everyone was fine, and I had missed. They talked about it the rest of the night as they got drunk. I still hear about it at many family get-togethers, and I have since educated myself, taken classes, and handled them just fine. My aim is pretty spot on as well.